Several polls show Republicans in trouble even in red states this weekend, but there are concerns that a lead may not be enough if some of the votes against Republicans aren't even allowed to count. That's the issue in Georgia, where the guy overseeing the governor's race is also running to be governor, Secretary of State Brian Kemp, accused of suppressing likely voters against his that would be used against his opponent, Stacey Abrams, to try to depress her vote. Now, he tried to block 53,000 people, predominantly black, from voting. He says it's not voter suppression. But tonight the news is it doesn't really matter what he says because he lost. Judges have intervened to ensure that many of those people are allowed to vote, noting the, quote, differential treatment against minorities in his orders. And with the door open to voting, Obama weighing in on this very issue while he was campaigning for Abrams.
If their efforts to take away your right to vote makes you mad, there's only one way to make it right. Don't boo. Vote.
I'm joined by Basil Smikle, a Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, and Leo Wright-Rigueur, professor at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Professor, what is the significance of this late court ruling in Georgia?
It's a big deal. I mean, the court essentially just flipped the script on the entire situation, which is that they expanded the enfranchise for, thousands of people in Georgia who have been excluded from the process. So we also know that Stacey Abrams has made this the centerpiece of her campaign. So in addition to kind of local policy, domestic policy issues, Stacey Abrams has talked a lot about ensuring that all Georgians have the right to vote because the vote is so important and because the vote is being taken away. And so her campaigning, how she's been out in the trail, even, the interactions with celebrities who have come out and hit the ground for her has always been about getting people out, getting unlikely voter out, getting non-voters out, and really getting people out who have been kicked out of the system or discriminated out of the system. So that's what we're really seeing here.
And Basil, that's certainly the issue in this race between these two candidates, but we want to give the wider context. This has been Brian Kemp's thing for a long time. Over 1 million people he's had knocked off the rolls, 1.4 million just since 2012.
That's right. And you heard former President Jimmy Carter come out and say that he should resign, which obviously he's not going to do. But there is this issue has been nationalized. I mean, consider that since 2010, 24 states have tightened their rules in terms of voter access. So you had Dorian Warren on earlier. So organizations like his and so many others are going to have to hit the ground, not just up until Tuesday, but after that, leading into 2020, to make sure that not only people know that they're registered to vote, but that secretaries of state are doing the right thing by the citizens in their state. I would also point out this. In Florida, for example, they have a ballot measure where voting yes would restore voting rights to over 1.45 million people who were formerly incarcerated. So there's a lot at stake here. We saw that with Virginia a couple of years ago. There is a lot at stake here, and there's also the sense that people are losing their privilege and power. That's what's really at the root of this.
And Leah, that's the sort of the ethics and the stakes of it. As a political scientist, I turn to you on the raw politics. Is there a chance that this could actually have a backlash effect and actually increase turnout from some of the affected communities in multiple states?
So we do know that in times like this where there has been a clampdown on suppression, that sometimes it does result in a backlash where we see a significant increase in the number of people who are determined to get to the polls. So Solts to the polls efforts, we see this in, say, 2012 as well. But and while that is a good thing, right? Increased turnout and determination and reaction to being told no, you can't vote or we're taking away your right to vote is great. Organizing around that is great. Institutionalizing so that democracy is protected is great. And yet, if we look at the long-term compounded effects, what we don't want is a system like we're seeing start to develop, particularly after the gutting of the Voting Rights Act a few years ago. What we don't want to develop is a long-term system that is intent on limiting the democratic rights of American citizens. And that's exactly what's happening. The other part of this is we've also seen a push, from a lot of these civil rights organizations, but also from, just good state legislatures really pushing for voting rights that enfranchise more people. Right. So we've seen automatic registrations across several states. Right. We've seen, the restoration of voting rights for felons. Let me get Basil in just one more time before we go. You've run a state Democratic Party. What's your number, your magic number Democrats would take in the House?
I think we're plus 3, 4.
26?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
And you'll say that live on TV, even though Michael Moore said you guys shouldn't do that.
I will say that live on TV, yes, because I've never understood the strategy of undermining your own aspirations. So I'm gonna acknowledge it.
How about that? Shoot for the stars. Basil and Leah, thanks to both of you.